Ever wondered what it's like to be a paramedic in the sky? From bizarre mid-air rules to things you wouldn't believe we've seen up there. This job is nothing like what you'd expect. The first time I stepped into a flying ambulance, I felt like I was entering something between a spaceship and a coffin. Sleek, sterile, and unnervingly quiet until the rotors spun to life. That silence never lasts long, though. Once you're up there, the whir of blades and mechanical breath of the pressurized cabin become part of you, like the pulsing of a second heart. It was supposed to be just another gig. After years of driving ground ambulances through tight urban streets and wreck-strewn highways, I figured I'd seen the worst. I was wrong. My name's Trevor Lane, and I work the night shift for AeroVital Emergency Services. It's one of those newer privatized outfits with state-of-the-art helicopters, bleeding-edge tech, and just enough red tape to choke you in bureaucracy if you're not careful. But the pay was good, and frankly, I needed change. Turns out, change comes at 14,000 feet with oxygen masks and rules that don't make any damn sense. The aircraft I crew on is called Raptor 9. Sound cool, right? Like something out of military op. But in reality, it's just a sleek black twin-rotor chopper outfitted with enough medical gear to rival a small ER. Monitors, intubation kits, trauma packs, sedatives, defibrillators. Everything we could need, and not a single inch of wasted space. Still, no matter how advanced it looks, it never feels right. Something about the air in Raptor 9 feels stale. Pressurized, sure, but heavier. Like it knows more than it lets on. The first rule I ever learned wasn't in the training manual. It was whispered to me by an older medic as we stood on the helipad before my first solo night flight. Whatever you do, Trev, never open the hatch above the clouds. Even if someone screams. I laughed at the time, but his eyes didn't flinch. He wasn't joking, and I learned soon enough. None of the night crew jokes. They just recite those strange rules like hymns they forgot the meaning of long ago. We lifted off at 9:47 p.m. sharp from the downtown helibase. The pilot that night was Caprice, quiet, laser-focused, always double-checking her instruments. She didn't talk much unless something was wrong, which suited me fine. In the back was Emma, my partner for the shift. She'd been with AeroVital for 3 years and already looked like she was counting down to retirement. "You nervous?" she asked me as we hit altitude, her voice barely cutting over the hum of the rotors. "Not really," I lied. "I've been through worse." She gave me a side glance and half-smile. They always say that. But the sky's different. We were dispatched to a small town east of the mountains, middle of nowhere. Logging accident. 2 patients. 1 critical. 40-minute ETA. Easy, if weather held. As the lights of the city disappeared below us, and the world turned into an endless patch of darkness and blinking red signals, I settled into the rhythm of prepping supplies. Needles arranged, oxygen ready, portable suction working. Everything was textbook until I glanced up at the list of laminated rules taped to the inside bulkhead. I hadn't noticed them before. AeroVital Night Protocol. Do not break these rules. 1. Never respond to a call not cleared through dispatch, even if it comes on an open emergency frequency. 2. If a patient coded and is revived, do not speak to them for the first 5 minutes post-resuscitation. 3. Do not open the left side window after midnight. 4. If you hear tapping on the hatch above, do not look up. 5. If a crew member goes silent for more than 10 minutes, confirm their identity before engaging. 6. Never land if the LZ, landing zone, lights flicker 3 times in quick succession. I reread them, my pulse ticking up with each line. They weren't safety rules. They were warnings. Cryptic, but written with the tone of people who had seen things. People who had lived through things. Emma noticed me staring. "Don't worry," she said flatly. "Most of them are just precautions. Like superstition. Like survival." We made the pickup without issue. A logger with a fractured femur and internal bleeding. His coworker, miraculously, was only suffering from shock. We loaded them both into the rear compartment. I started working on the injured man, getting him stabilized, plugging into monitors, prepping blood. Midway through the flight back, things shifted. The temperature in the cabin dropped, noticeably, cold enough to thaw my face shield. The monitors began flickering. I thought it was turbulence, but Caprice's voice came through the comm. "No turbulence reported. Systems green. Visuals clear." Emma looked at me, then the patient. The logger's heart rate was accelerating. 120, then 130 BPM, erratic spikes. I checked the leads, then the airway. Nothing looked wrong. "Is he waking up?" I asked. "No sedative yet," she replied. "He shouldn't be conscious." Then the man's eyes opened, and he smiled. Not the dazed, grateful smile of someone rescued. Not the delirious grin of morphine confusion. It was a wide, knowing smile that chilled me deeper than the cold in the cabin. He whispered something. My face was inches from his. His breath smelled like copper and rot. He said my name. Not Trevor. Not Trev. He used my full name, in a voice that wasn't his. Trevor Marcus Lane. I jerked back instinctively, knocking over a tray. Emma was frozen. The heart monitor screeched, no longer displaying numbers, just a blank screen with a pulsing white line. The man was still smiling, eyes unblinking, mouth half open, as if about to speak again. Emma snapped out of it first. "Don't talk to him," she hissed. "Not for 5 minutes." "What?" "Rule 2. He coded when you turn to grab the oneg. Didn't you hear the beep? Just shut up and wait." I hadn't noticed. The vitals. The flatline. He must have died, briefly, and now he was back. I looked down. He was no longer smiling. His mouth was slack. His eyes were closed again. Breathing, shallow but steady. I checked the clock. For minutes since he revived. Then came the tapping. From above. Deliberate. Slow. 3 knocks. Then silence. Emma didn't move. Neither did I. "Do not look," she whispered. "We're over 10,000 feet. What the hell is that?" I whispered. "I don't know," she said. "But it taps when someone speaks before the 5 minutes. You didn't talk, so don't break that streak." Caprice came on the intercom again. Her voice was strained. "We've got something on the radar. Holding altitude. Could be a drone. Or a glitch. Sit tight." I didn't say anything. I just stared at the floor, counting breaths. The tapping stopped. 5 minutes passed. The patient groaned softly and turned his head. This time, when he opened his eyes, they were his own. Confused. Painful. Human. What happened?" he croaked. Emma finally relaxed. "You're okay. We've got you. Just rest." I nodded, still shaken. "Yeah, you coded. But you're back." We didn't talk much for the rest of the flight. When we landed, the cold in the cabin seemed to vanish. The patient was transferred. The monitors were recalibrated and worked fine. There was no trace of the radar anomaly, and no mention of tapping from the pilot. But that night, before I left, I went back into Raptor 9. The rules were still there. Only now, someone had added another line, handwritten in thick red marker. 7. If it learns your full name, it can follow you home. And beneath that, scribbled in trembling handwriting, it knows mine now. Emma hadn't clocked out, and her ID badge was missing from the locker. The break room felt wrong the moment I stepped into it. Maybe it was the buzzing light overhead, flickering just enough to raise the hair on my arms. Or maybe it was the fact that Emma's locker sat wide open, her gear still folded neatly on the bench. Uniform, headset, flight gloves, everything accounted for, except Emma herself. I stood frozen in the doorway, the early morning hum of the helibays crawling up my spine like a swarm of ants. No chatter, no dispatch calls, just silence. The kind of silence that seems to grow teeth the longer you stand in it. Her badge was gone, the one she always clipped to her belt, even off duty. Everyone knew she was meticulous about it. I joked just yesterday that she'd probably be buried with it. Now it was gone, just the pale rectangular outline where it had rested like a nameplate to the living. I didn't report it. Not then. I don't know why. Maybe it was the rule. The new one. If it learns your full name, it can follow you home. I didn't want to give it another name. That night, I was back on Raptor 9. Different crew. Different route. The medtech paired with me was a guy named Mike. Big guy. Ex-military. The kind who chewed sunflower seeds with the same focus most people use for defusing bombs. You the rookie who flew with Emma? He asked without looking up from the equipment tray. Yeah. Last night. He nodded slowly. Thought so. You see her today? No, I lied. Huh. Silence again. That was the weirdest thing about this job. So much silence for a profession built around emergencies. The sky felt too big, and too empty, and sometimes too alive. Mike didn't seem rattled, though. Like he'd already been ground through something worse than what I could imagine. What's with the handwritten rule? I asked finally. The one someone added after last night. About names. Mike's hand stilled. The seed cracked between his molars. Some things don't go in the manual, he said. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. We were dispatched before I could press further. Rural site again. Unresponsive female. Suspected overdose. 2 passengers this time. 1 patient, 1 relative. As we lifted off, I felt it again. That unnatural shift in the air. The smell of pressurized metal. The weight that settled on your chest before anything went wrong. The altimeter blinked steadily as we climbed, and I locked into routine. Vitals, O2 mask for a line. Mike monitored the comms. Everything seemed normal, except the patient kept whispering. She wasn't conscious, barely breathing, but her lips moved. Softly, rhythmically. I leaned in the walls, in the wings, in the wires. Her voice wasn't her own. It had that same tin-can echo I'd heard from the logger the night before. Like the sound of something being broadcast from somewhere far too deep. I backed away instinctively. She's whispering. Mike didn't flinch. Don't engage. Could be a mimic. A what? He finally looked up at me. Sometimes, when they die, even for a second, something else gets a turn at the wheel. The rule's there to give him time to fade. Most times they do. Sometimes they don't. And if they don't, you get Rule 7. The patient stopped whispering. Her vitals were weak, but steady. Then the relative, a teenage girl, probably 16, suddenly sat up and said, "You're not supposed to hear that yet." I turned. "What did you say?" But the girl just blinked at me, confused. I didn't say anything. Mike and I stared at each other. Something had gone very wrong. Then the lights in the cabin dimmed, and the monitor began displaying something new. Not vitals. Not code. Text. White block letters on a black screen. Trevor Marcus Lane. My name. Spelled wrong. But close. Shut it down, Mike barked. Kill all non-essential systems. I fumbled with the switches, flipping off the display feeds and toggling the emergency isolation. The air in the cabin grew warmer, as if whatever had been watching had retreated, but not completely. Then the knocking came back. 3 taps. This time, not above. It came from inside the cabinet nearest the trauma pack. Mike stood slowly and pulled a red tape strip across the latch. Don't open it. What's inside? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, grim. Nothing, if you're lucky. We landed without further incident. The patient was rushed into the ER, and the teen girl vanished into the waiting area crowd. I wanted to chase her down, ask her what she meant. You're not supposed to hear that yet. That sentence kept scratching at my brain like nails against bone. But something stopped me. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I asked, if I pushed, I'd hear more than I wanted. After the debrief, I confronted Mike in the parking lot. He was leaning against the side of his truck, looking like he hadn't aged a day in 30 years, but had lived through 100. I need to know, I said. Emma's gone. She didn't check out. Her badge is missing. That can't just be ignored. I know, he said. You know. He nodded, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a laminated card. Not a badge, a rule sheet. Not the official one either. This one was hand-scrawled, water-stained, and torn at the edges. He handed it to me. Unofficial protocol. Night crew only. Rule 8. Do not trust your reflection during high-altitude turbulence. Rule 9. If something calls your name twice in the same minute, it's not trying to get your attention. It's trying to replace you. Rule 10. If a patient dies with their eyes open, close them immediately. If they resist, abandon aircraft. Rule 11. You can only speak to the sky once. Don't waste it. I read it twice. 3 times. What is this? Collected knowledge, he said, from medics who didn't make it. Emma added Rule 10. She what? He lit a cigarette with hands that didn't shake. 2 weeks ago, she flew a call where the patient coded and came back, but refused to close his eyes. Said they were watching her from behind the lids. She came back shaking. Wrote that rule down. No one believed her. I stared at the paper in my hands. You think that's what happened to her? I think she followed every rule but one, Mike said. She talked to it. That night, I went home and didn't sleep. My apartment windows stayed shut. Every creak made me flinch. I checked the mirror more times than I want to admit. Then, at 3:09 a.m., my radio buzzed to life. The Aero Vital channel. Dispatch. Flight request. Raptor 9. Night crew standby. Code Echo. Code Echo. My hands trembled. I picked up the receiver. This is Lane. Code Echo. Confirm. The radio crackled. Then, unmistakably, a voice came through. Trevor Marcus Lane. My full name. I dropped the receiver. The static died, but the message lingered. There was someone, or something, up there that knew me now, and I was scheduled to fly again tomorrow. The next night came too fast. I'd barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my name spoken over the radio in that awful, hollow voice. Not just said, dragged, like it was being scraped across metal and fed through static. My thoughts twisted with it, looping into waking nightmares. The voice was inside the silence, speaking in a rhythm I couldn't unhear. When I reported in at 9 p.m., the hangar felt thinner, like something was stretched taut across the space between the helicopters, just barely holding back a pressure I didn't have words for. Raptor 9 sat in her usual bay, dark and waiting. As I approached, I half expected the engines to kick on by themselves. But nothing moved, until I reached the door. The moment I touched the handle, every interior light flickered on. I stepped back. A tech passing by gave me a wary look. Auto trigger must be glitching. Yeah, I muttered. Must be. He didn't look convinced either. My partner that night was someone new, Alyssa. She was tall, pale, with sharp eyes and a voice like melted steel. Her demeanor was clinical to the point of detachment. When I tried to make small talk during pre-flight, she shut it down with a quiet, "Save your voice. You may need it later." It wasn't a warning. It was a fact. That set the tone for the entire flight. Dispatch had us scheduled for a strange call, mid-air pickup, not unusual in itself, but the coordinates were over open wilderness. No nearby base. No known aircraft down. The call had come in with no return comms. Just a transponder ping from a location 13,000 feet over a mountain range. Alyssa didn't seem fazed. "Happens more than you'd think," she said, strapping herself into the crash seat. "Sky buries things." The pilot didn't say much either. A guy named Rufus. Old school. Barely looked at us when we climbed aboard. As we took off, I watched the ground fall away, swallowed by night, the lights shrinking until we were alone in a velvet void. Only the soft red glow of the cabin lights kept the dark from swallowing us whole. As we approached the coordinates, turbulence kicked in. Not normal bumps, violent lurches like something invisible was clawing at the belly of the craft. The instrument spiked, then flatlined. "Radar's dead," Rufus reported calmly. "Visual only. We're flying blind." I asked. "We're flying quiet," Alyssa corrected. "There's a difference." She reached up and pulled the overhead med bag toward her. Inside, I expected to see trauma kits. But instead, she pulled out a cloth-wrapped bundle and unwrapped it with care. Inside was a set of earplugs. 2 sets. She handed one to me. "What's this for? If you hear it, you'll listen. If you listen, it'll know." I didn't ask what it was. I just put the plugs in. Then we saw it, hovering below us in the moonlight. An emergency raft suspended mid-air, dangling by what looked like tethers made of light. But there was no source, no aircraft, no flare, no support, just a raft and a figure lying inside it. "What the hell?" I started, but Alyssa cut me off. "Don't say anything else. Not until they're inside." We lowered, slowly, the rotors trembling with resistance. The wind howled in odd gusts, like it was breathing, alive. When Rufus stabilized the descent, Alyssa clipped herself in, opened the side bay, and helped guide the patient inside. They were unconscious. Male, maybe late 30s. No ID. Blood along the side of his head, his shirt soaked through. Eyes open and resisting. His eyelids kept twitching, muscles spasming every time Alyssa tried to close them. "Rule 10, I muttered. Alyssa froze. "You know about Rule 10? "I know, I added it." Her jaw tensed. "Then help me close them." It took both of us. The moment his lids finally shut, the cabin lights surged off, plunging us into total blackness. Then a scream, muffled, "Hi," from somewhere in the walls. We both turned at once. It wasn't the patient. The scream had come from inside the bulkhead. I scrambled for my flashlight and swept the beam across the cabin. Nothing, until the left side window. A face, pressed against the glass from the outside. No features, just indentations where eyes and a mouth should have been, smeared across the window like wet paint underwater. It didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. Then, from the radio, dead 5 minutes earlier, came a whisper. Mm. Alyssa grabbed my arm. Don't respond. Don't acknowledge. It's an echo. The light snapped back on. The face was gone. The patient was breathing normally, his eyes still closed. Did we just? I started, but stopped myself. No full names. No reflections. No acknowledgement. We touched down at the base 30 minutes later. The radar never recovered. The raft was gone. No one had seen it attached. No flight record. The man's body was wheeled out by ER staff. They told us he'd flatlined before he even boarded the bird. Dead? I asked. He was breathing. Maybe. But he didn't have a heartbeat when they checked him. I felt bile rise in my throat. Are you saying we flew a corpse? Alyssa stared after the stretcher as it disappeared into the building. Not a corpse, she said softly. Just a vessel. I confronted Rufus in the hangar after debrief. What do we bring back? He was wiping down the controls with a rag that smelled of copper and ozone. I didn't see anything, he said without turning around. You're telling me you didn't hear that scream? You didn't see the face. He finally looked at me. You want a vice? He said. Don't ask what the sky doesn't volunteer. Then he pulled something from his flight jacket and handed it to me. A photo. A team of paramedics. 7 of them. All in front of Raptor 9. Smiling. One of them was Emma. The others were strangers, except for one. Alyssa. But the photo was dated 2011. 14 years ago. I stared at it, flipping it over. On the back, scrawled in faded pen. Sky doesn't forget. Neither do they. That night, I didn't go home. I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just away. Every traffic light flicker felt like a warning. Every gust of wind sounded like breathing. I pulled off the highway at 3:17 a.m. and checked into a roadside motel with broken vending machines and flickering neon. Sleep didn't come, but knock did. At 3:41 a.m. 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. From inside the bathroom door. My radio was turned off. My phone had no signal. I didn't move. I just whispered to myself, over and over, don't respond. Don't engage. Don't speak your name. But then the bathroom door creaked open, and from the shadows, something whispered. Trevor. Marcus. Lane. Misspelled again. A near miss. But getting closer. By the 4th night, I'd stopped pretending this was just a bad run of missions or a few unexplainable anomalies. There were too many cracks forming in the world I thought I understood, and something was seeping through. Something ancient, calculating, and just barely restrained by the thin skin of our reality. I didn't report the knock at the motel door. I didn't tell anyone about the voice. I didn't sleep either. Instead, I waited. Because I knew they'd send me back up again. My orders came through around 8:40 p.m. The message was brief, clinical. Emergency evac. Solo paramedic required. Night transport only. Raptor 9 prepped and cleared. 9:15 departure. Solo. That word chilled me deeper than anything else. I called dispatch. No answer. I checked with the hangar chief. He just pointed toward Raptor 9, eyes distant, as though something else had already taken hold of his mind. And sure enough, the helicopter sat in the hangar, humming low and steady, rotors still but engine warm. Ready, waiting, wanting. I should have refused the flight. I should have run. Instead, I strapped myself in and lifted off. No pilot this time. Just the autopilot, calibrated for auto-retrieval. Destination, a remote comm tower in the Badlands, 70 miles out. No roads, no ground crew. Just a faint emergency signal, repeating every 13 seconds like a heartbeat. I tried radioing ahead. Static. My headset buzzed, but the frequency felt off. It wasn't AeroVital. It was that other frequency, the one they never logged, the one that only opened after dark. 13 seconds passed. Then a voice cut through. Not human, not machine, somewhere in between. He is alone. We are listening. He has almost learned. I ripped off the headset. The rotors shuddered violently, as if the helicopter had flinched. I arrived at the site just before midnight. The beacon was weak but steady, blinking red on a cracked platform of rusted steel. No landing zone prepared. No flares. Just the tower. And, at its base, a shape. At first I thought it was a person. Then I saw how it moved. It didn't walk. It slid, like a projection, skipping through time. One moment, it was kneeling. The next, it was standing 5 feet to the left, arms out. Then gone. I should have turned back. But the system locked the rotors in standby. I was committed. I unbuckled, stepped down into the dark. The air was colder than it should have been. My breath steamed out in heavy plumes. The tower creaked above me, metal joints groaning like old bones. Then I saw her. Lying behind a half-frozen generator was a woman, mid-40s, bloodied, lips blue, pulse weak, but alive. I scanned her ID badge out of instinct. Emma Rowe. My brain refused to process it. She'd vanished 3 nights ago, left no trace. Her badge had disappeared. The locker had been empty. But here she was, breathing, whispering. I leaned closer. You shouldn't be here. Her voice was brittle, eyes fluttering beneath half-shut lids. I tried to follow the rules. I did, but they don't care anymore. The rules only keep them out when they're obeyed by everyone. She grabbed my wrist. Hard. Trevor, she rasped. Don't bring it back with you. What? Her eyes locked onto mine, desperate, bloodshot. They ride in the memories. They can't breach skin. But names are doors. I heard the helicopter powering back up behind me. Autopilot, returning to base. With or without me. I hauled her up. She could barely stand. And as we stepped toward Raptor 9, I saw it. The extra passenger. Already seated. Already buckled in. Head bowed. Face hidden beneath a medical blanket. It hadn't been there before. There was no log of a third retrieval. But there it was. Seat 3C. Always empty. Until now. Emma moaned weakly. No, not again. We loaded in. I didn't dare touch the thing in seat 3C. I just avoided its gaze, if it had one, and focused on Emma, stabilizing her, whispering meaningless reassurances while my hands trembled. The aircraft lifted off, climbing into the clouds. And that's when the whispers began again. Not from Emma, not from the radio, from the walls. He is known now. The name is worn thin. The sky remembers. One more breath, and the gate opens. I turn to look at seat 3C. The blanket had fallen away. And there, staring straight at me, was my own face. Eyes empty, mouth smiling, head tilted at an impossible angle, as if it had been dropped from the clouds and kept on grinning. Hello, Trevor, it said, voice warping with static. You brought me home. I staggered back, slamming into the med rack. Alarms blared. Oxygen levels dropped. Autopilot began to fail, navigation blinking with red X's. Emma screamed. The lights strobed, and the thing in seat 3C stood up, limbs jerking like a puppet on tangled strings. It stepped toward me, wearing my name like a stolen coat, repeating it over and over in that voice. Trevor. Marcus. Lane. Trevor. Marcus. Lane. I fumbled for the emergency vent switch. I couldn't land, but I could open the hatch. Rule 4 flashed in my mind. If you hear tapping on a hatch above, do not look up. But this time, I had to. I flipped the release. The hatch burst open with a howl of wind. The doppelganger screamed, not in fear, but in fury. It reached for me, but Emma threw the trauma kit straight at its chest, knocking it backward just long enough. I dragged it by the arms, my arms, toward the open hatch. The wind fought us both. It tried to speak again, but the sound was drowned by the scream of air and sky. And with one final push, I shoved it upward, into the sky that had birthed it. It didn't fall. It vanished, swallowed whole by the clouds. When I landed, the autopilot was wrecked. The med equipment was scrambled. Seat 3C was empty. Emma was barely conscious, and the ground crew never questioned why we didn't respond over comms the entire way down. They just took her, silent and pale, into the ER, and I stood by the aircraft, shaking, because as I stepped off the bird and looked up, I saw my own face staring down at me, reflected in the window of Raptor 9, smiling. They grounded Raptor 9 the next morning. Officially, the flight was labeled as systems malfunction, the onboard navigation and electrical issues chalked up to electromagnetic interference from a storm front we'd flown through. No mention of the third seat. No passenger log dispute. No record of Emma being retrieved from tower. Because, according to the hospital, she never arrived. They had no intake records. No patient under her name. No transfer logs. Nothing. Emma Rowe had vanished again. Just like last time. I stopped going home. Every mirror in my apartment had started to show me things that weren't mine. Slight variations in posture, eye color, head tilt. In the reflection, I looked exactly the same, but something behind the gaze felt inhabited. My own face stared back like it was waiting for me to blink first. So I stayed at the base, slept in the emergency lounge, or inside the decommissioned bird in Hangar B. Rufus stopped flying. Alyssa disappeared after our last shift. Mike hadn't been seen since he gave me that handwritten rule sheet. I was the last one left from the night crew. And Raptor 9, she waited, her rotors silent, her cockpit still warm when I passed by, as if she knew she'd be in the air again soon. It happened 3 nights later. I woke up in a lounge to find the TV buzzing static and every light flickering in perfect rhythm. 3 quick blinks, pause, 3 more. Rule 6 screamed through my skull. Never land if the LZ lights flicker 3 times in quick succession. But I wasn't landing. I was still on the ground. A message printed out from the desk printer in front of me. The machine hadn't been used in months. No headers. No ID. Just one line. Trevor Marcus Lane. Final flight approved. I didn't remember submitting for a shift. I didn't remember consenting to anything. But when I stepped outside, Raptor 9's bay was open. Lights on. Engines thrumming softly. And in the co-pilot seat sat a figure in a black flight suit. Helmet down. Visor reflective. Waiting. I boarded. Didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. There are moments when you feel the narrative closing around you. Not as a story, but as a sentence being read aloud by something that's always known your ending. The aircraft lifted into the sky with impossible silence. No turbulence. No sound. No city below. Just blackness, like we were flying through a tunnel between worlds. The co-pilot never moved. Never spoke. But every so often, I could hear something breathing in sync with mine. And then, the rules began to change. The rule sheet pinned to the bulkhead shimmered. its laminated surface rippling like water, and the lines began to shift, letters reordering themselves, phrases vanishing and reforming. The first rule now read, "You are not Trevor Marcus Lane," and below it, "You are only what the sky allows you to be." I blinked, heart hammering. Each line scrolled past in red, bleeding font. The sky does not forget. The sky does not forgive. The sky only recycles the lost. And then the final rule burned into the laminate. If you look down and see your own body, do not attempt to re-enter it. I looked down. I didn't mean to. The clouds had parted beneath us. And there, far, far below, I saw the landing pad outside the base. Raptor 9 was sitting idle, and I was standing beside it, head tilted, expression blank, watching the sky, watching me, from up here. I slammed my eyes shut, tried to breathe. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. But then the co-pilot turned, helmet still down, slowly raised a gloved hand and touched the visor, and lifted it. My face stared back, dead-eyed, skin pale, hair wet with static. It smiled, not warmly, but with recognition, like it was finally reclaiming something it had lost. "Thank you," it whispered in a dozen layered voices. "You kept the seat warm." I tried to unbuckle. I tried to run, but I couldn't move. The cabin sealed shut. The lights turned red, and the entire world flipped upside down. Not physically, existentially, because I wasn't in Raptor 9 anymore. I was inside something wearing its shape, and the sky was no longer above me. It was inside me, rushing through my blood, saturating my thoughts, burning away my name one syllable at a time. Trevor Marcus, until it was gone, until I couldn't remember if it had ever been mine. They found a man 3 days later, walking barefoot along the perimeter of the Aerovital base. His hair was matted, his eyes blank. He had no ID, no wounds, no vitals worth recording. He didn't respond to his name, any name, not even Trevor Marcus Lane. They ran fingerprints. Nothing. Facial recognition failed. He was officially a John Doe. He never spoke again. Not until one night, during a shift change, a nurse heard him whisper something. For words, barely audible. "The sky remembers me." And outside the hospital window, far above the city, a black twin-rotor ambulance cut silently through the stars. Empty, except for one seat. Still warm. Still waiting. The end.